So you're only a few years younger than me, Jay. So you probably remember a bit of the 60s. I don't know, but I was born in 64. You don't remember the 60s at all?
No, I mean, my earliest memory recall is when I was 2, believe it or not, and I can't remember much else. But that was 69, and what I can remember is actually being on the floor at my grandparents' flat, and at what seemed to be like the television, like way up in the air, but it wasn't. It was only on a coffee table. That's probably because I was so small, right? And they were all watching the moon landing, and I do recall it. I absolutely do recall it. I don't know whether that was because at the time it was being instilled to me that I needed to remember it, or what. I don't know. But I probably couldn't even speak, to be honest. At 2, I have no idea. But I do have a visual memory of it.
I remember the moon landing as well, although I was a few years older than you, so maybe I should. So that was 69, wasn't it? Was it 69? So yeah, I was 5, you were 2. So I'm not sure. It might have been on BBC 2. I'm not sure about that. But
I wouldn't know that. But I've just got that visual memory of everybody being in, all family being in my grandparents' flat, and TV, black and white TV, all this going on, and yada yada. And I think I was probably more interested in, playing with a cardboard box or something. But
yeah, so
I seem to recall it. But no, I don't remember any of the 60s. No.
Yeah, so I do. I remember the 60s. In my mind, I have lots of images of the 66 World Cup, but I don't know whether that was in real time or whether that was due to replays or recordings. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, but along with the Kennedy assassination, we also had, like you say, the moon landing. It was also the year of James Bond, the Cold War. And I went to school when I was 4. So, and in our history books, so that would have been more in the 70s. We used to laugh a lot at what was going on in Eastern Europe, all the stories we'd hear.
Yeah.
But the older you get, you sometimes think, was actually some of that projection? I'm not saying life was great in Eastern Europe in those days, but you sometimes wonder whether some of what we read about what was happening there was a lot of it was propaganda to hide actually some of the stuff that our own people were doing. Yeah. So the reason I say that is in relation to the Kennedy assassination is if what had gone on in Dealey Plaza had happened in Moscow, would how our media reported it and how our history books teach us, would they have reported it the same way, or would they have reported it differently? Because I would argue that if the events that took place in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963 had happened in Eastern Europe, we'd have all been having a laugh about it and saying what a joke it was. What do you think? How it was what a joke of an investigation took place, how the media reported it, and so on. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I mean, I think if it had happened in the UK, I think there would have been more pressure. Like for example, if the British Prime Minister of the time had been assassinated in London, right? I think there would have been more pressure from the US to get to the truth of what happened with us than there was from us trying to get to the truth of what happened in the US. I've always thought that.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about what would have happened if it had happened anywhere else, you know, other than either the US or Britain. But I would have, it's hard to imagine really, but I would have thought that if something like that had happened in Russia, we probably wouldn't have seen anything. You know, I know what we saw obviously with the JFK stuff. Obviously there was reports, there was footage, there was this, that, and the other. I know we didn't get to see the Zapruder film until 73 or whenever it was, but
70, yeah, was it 75? It appeared
73,
on Geraldo
yeah,
Rivera, 75, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe. But what I'm saying is, I don't. If it happened in Russia, I don't think we would have ever seen anything, to be honest, back in those days.
Let's just say that sort of there'd been leaks of bits, you know, the CIA had cottoned on to what had gone on. I'm sure we would have been ridiculing them about the mock investigations that had taken place and so on.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think we probably would. But again, don't forget, it was a very, very, very different time. And as much as without what we've got now, with, like, you know, social media, and pretty much everybody in the world is a reporter with their cameras.
Yeah.
Most of the time, most people just believed what they were told back in those days.
Yeah.
You know, if it came from the BBC or it came from a newspaper like the Times or whatever, people would just believe it.
Yeah.
They had no reason to disbelieve it back in those days, right? Whereas, you know, time's gone on since, you know, just your average Joe in the street will be able to sort of like gather information within minutes and make a decision or make an observation that then questions, you know, decisions and official versions and so on and so forth within minutes of it happening. Whereas back in those days, you couldn't do that.
Okay, so anyway, we've previously discussed the setting, security, the events that led up to the shooting itself. So let's now take a look at what happened from the moment the shots had finished. So let's start with the limousine. So, of course, both Connolly and Kennedy had been shot, Kennedy fatally. So the limousine then, of course, shot off to the hospital. Referring back to the Zapruder film, and we've discussed about how authentic that film is. Some people, or in the film, it suggests that the car didn't stop, although I think we would disagree with that. So, so how long, Jace, did it take for the car to get to the hospital? The thing, before we talk about how long it took, the thing about that is, so Greer, I mean, he wouldn't have known. I'm sure he didn't know Dallas. So how did they get to the hospital? I guess it was the lead car took them there, I guess.
Yeah, well, I would have thought so, yeah. I mean, I don't even know how far it was from the actual assassination point to Parkland. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure the route, but I think they had to go down under the overpass. Yeah. Get on the Stemmons Highway, and it was, I don't know where it was from there.
Yeah, I've never really found out what sort of distance it was.
But it was less than 30 minutes because he arrived at the hospital before 1 o'clock when he was officially declared dead. So yeah. I think could only have taken a maximum of 10 minutes because they called for a priest in that time as well.
They probably have one already on standby, to be fair.
Yeah. So yeah, so the car went off to Parkland, and then the thing that I was wondering about was Forrest Sorrells was in that car in front, in the lead car, but then he was also at the depository at 1 o'clock apparently. So did he actually drive off to Parkland and then come back to Dealey Plaza immediately? I don't know what happened there.
There's a lot of those sort of comings and goings that have never really been explained, haven't they?
Yeah. So anyway, we got the cars. Of course, it's gone off to the hospital, but let's just stay in Dealey Plaza for the moment. And then, so those people, I probably wouldn't have known. Some of them might not have known that Kennedy had been hit, and those that realized he had might not have realized it was ultimately fatal. So
yeah, I guess so.
What happened? What happened in Dealey Plaza after the car disappeared? So we had all these people there mulling around. What did they do?
Well, I mean, I've seen some footage, and again, you know, people always talk about the Zapruder film, and we know about the Babushka Ladies film. We also know that there was somebody else filming it from the fourth floor of the book depository. Yeah,
I noticed you referred to that.
Yeah, and we know of other people that were filming it as well, but you never ever really see much of that footage, if anything at all, right?
Yeah.
But I have seen footage of another camera angle, where immediately after the car is sped off, and almost instantly, a whole bunch of people run from the opposite side of the road, so that on Jackie Kennedy's side, on the opposite side of the road, but they literally run instantly, almost instinctively, towards the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever really, well, somebody probably has asked the question why, but it's never really been answered why, you know, or even investigated. Sorry, can I pause it a minute now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so obviously in this footage, if you see people like literally darting up towards the grassy knoll almost instinctively, I also noticed that whilst there's a whole bunch of people doing that, sort of going through them, and like one or two guys casually strolling towards the book depository in suit and a hat or trilby or whatever, just walking along minding their own business as though nothing's happened.
Yeah.
Like they're going for the paper at the corner shop or something.
Yeah.
And you've got to ask the question, well, why would they at least not stop and look at the people? Even if they weren't aware of what was going on, why would they not be even, you know, sort of questioning what all these people were doing running towards the grassy knoll or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Just all a bit weird. Really.
So
and why were there certain policemen putting their arms out trying to stop people going up the grassy knoll? What was that about?
That's peculiar. So why would you do that? So yeah, as you say, a lot of people did make their way instinctively, as you say, over to the grassy knoll. I think I put up a few pictures as well. I mean, there's one picture where there's a guy who I think looks a little bit like what's the bloody guy's name? Ed, I can't remember, the guy who was in Vietnam. Anyway, the guy who they think might have anyway, there are some guys walking down the central green on the south side of Elm, and they're kind of looking over at Elm, and you think, where are they heading? I mean, they're heading down to the triple overpass, but there's nothing down there. Why are you heading down there? I mean,
or is there?
Was there a little cafe tobacco down there or something? I mean, were they going for a little espresso? I mean, what's going on?
Little greasy spoon. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of, and you know, I'm convinced as well. I'm convinced I've seen Jack Ruby on that grassy knoll. I'm convinced, but that's just me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we got all those people heading up to the grassy knoll instinctively. Why did they instinctively head up? I guess some people were following other people, but then you need some people to start it all off.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd run. I don't know. I mean, I've not been in that situation, but I'm not sure I would run instinctively to a spot where I thought a gunman was.
I think if there were a lot of you and been shooting at the president, I think you might do, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think in outrage, I think you would. In outrage, I think you would.
Yeah, I guess you probably would. Yeah.
And then you've got Bobby. Is it Bobby Vargas? What was his name? The cyclist.
Yeah.
So I've seen one comment. No, he didn't run up the embankment there. But then I've seen a photo where he's actually sprinting along the top of that embankment to the triple overpass. So why did he sprint along there? So I read that a woman had told him there was somebody there, or had he actually seen something from behind the picket fence, or actually from the triple overpass area? And where he ran to, that was the north end of the triple overpass. Where he ran to was where I think Roscoe White was stationed.
See, I've always maintained that if the official version, which as we know was the lone gunman in the book depository, and that was the only direction that the shots came from, I've always maintained that if there was just one location that the shots came from, then everybody would have reacted the same way.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Same point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they'd have all stood outside the book depository waiting for the police to bring somebody out.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's pretty clear there were shots from different directions.
Yeah.
Whether they were all intended to hit the president or they were diversionary shots, I'm not sure. But I think we can say pretty confidently there were shots from different directions. And if there were shots from different directions, there was more than one person involved.
Yeah. And if you were going to ask me what I actually thought, my thought has always been that the only shot that came, if any shot came from the book depository, the only shot would have been the one that missed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the odds of hitting from there, I mean,
slim.
I'm not sure, 50-50, but not very high.
Slim.
But I think I'm not even sure myself that there were actually shots from the depository myself.
Neither am I.
I'm not convinced. And the thing about that is, if there were shots from the depository, then that implicates somebody that was in the depository, although ultimately the person who took the blame for it had been there. But by there not being any shots from the depository, then the people who were setting Oswald up could just say, well, no shots were fired.
I've also wondered as well, because I've never really been able to find out, to be honest, is what was the escape route? What was the escape route from the depository, right? So did it have one entrance, one way in, one way out, or did it have a back entrance? Did it have a side entrance?
Well, you talking about the depository now, or what?
Yeah.
I know there was a back entrance. Yeah,
there was. And is that what we assume Lee Harvey Oswald exited by?
Well, there are different theories. The one I recall is that he actually just walked out through the front door,
which is farcical.
Well, I mean,
it's farcical in as much as there are enough statements or enough testimonies from people to say that they actually heard shots from the depository, right?
Yeah, but there are also witness testimonies that they saw people running out of the book depository after the shooting at the rear. They saw it in the loading bay. There was a loading bay at the back, so they actually, witnesses said they saw people running out of the place, and apparently it wasn't like there were just a skeleton staff in there. Apparently, there were loads of people in there. There was even a military intelligence guy in there. James Powell, I think his name was. There were people in an office. The door was locked, and they were in the office talking while the assassination was going on. What were they doing in there? I mean, everybody thinks that building was just one company. No, it wasn't one company. It was a building with lots of different companies with their own offices in that building.
Yeah. But
that's never been explained clearly. Everybody just has this vision. It's just this one company. No, it's not one company.
No, I know. But one thing I've always wondered, like when we were talking about the other day, was that in order to plan a route, you've got to do a recce. You've got to do reconnaissance to find out, what's a dangerous point, what's not a dangerous point, etc., etc. Now, if I just don't, for the life of me, I do not understand why. I mean, clearly there were either police or Secret Service or both at the front of the book depository, because you had them along lining the route at various points, right? But why would you not have them at the rear of the buildings?
Yeah.
And if you did have them at the rear of the buildings, because I'm assuming that they weren't at the rear of the buildings, but if they did have them at the rear of the buildings, why were they not stopping anybody that was running out of the building?
Yeah, apparently the building wasn't sealed off until 1 o'clock.
No, I know.
That's 30 minutes after the shooting.
Yeah, and I think it's after the shooting of Tippett as well, is it not?
No. Well, officially, I even unofficially, I think it was still before the Tippett shooting. Tippett shooting was like 1:10, 1:15, although there's disagreement about the exact time. So also about the depository, apparently the electric went out in the building immediately before the shooting. The electric went out, so the shaft, they had an elevator system in there, wouldn't work. So some people theorize that if there were people up on the 6th floor, for example, they actually came down the elevator shaft. So they wouldn't have needed to have come down the stairs. But then, like we said before, actually, is it just a decoy? Maybe nothing actually happened in the book depository. Maybe it was all going on at the Dal-Tex and from the court building. And maybe there was nothing actually going on in the depository except the setting up of the boxes and the bullets.
There was a guy in that bread van outside who's got a pair of wire cutters. That's what it was.
Yeah, but that James Powell from military intelligence, he was in there. So yeah. So that was the depository. Police, they sort of had a look around the railway tracks, and of course the tramps were found in the railway carriage at the back. So,
another question springs to mind, and that question is: if people run out of the front of the book depository,
yeah,
immediately after the shots and ran out the back as well.
Yeah.
Did anybody run out from any of the other buildings?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question.
Because if they didn't, I mean, I know there's a lot of panic and everything going on, and you know, a lot of headless chicken action going on. But if nobody ran out of any of the other buildings, do you not think the police would have thought it's suspicious that everybody's just running out of one building?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So, but you know, then that also begs the question: did they seal off any of the other buildings? So they didn't seal off the depository until 1 o'clock. Did they try and seal off the other buildings? I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
Okay, so the limousine's gone off to the hospital. People have rushed over to the grassy knoll. The depository hasn't been sealed off until 1 o'clock. People kind of forget about what was happening in the other areas. I mean, so the car park, the police said they searched the car park, but in that,
the one behind the picket fence.
Yeah. So apparently the car park was full, bumper to
Maybe
bumper.
that's why people were running up the grassy knoll to get to their cars. Maybe.
But apparently the car park was full, bumper to bumper. But did they check all the cars? I mean, there could have been the shooter in one of the cars, hiding in one of the cars. There could have been the murder weapon in one of the cars. What about the drains? There must have been drains there. I mean, if there were drains there, if you just shot the president of the United States, you want to escape. So to me, a drain underground is the way you're going to try to escape. You're not going to try and escape overground, in my view, unless you've got a disguise, and like, as we discussed before, a police uniform would be the kind of disguise that would be quite inconspicuous. So so they did look there, but then they were all called to the depository. So some of the guys who'd been down in the car park suddenly were up in the on the 6th floor of the depository. As regards the other buildings, I mean, some people have said, I kind of agree, there were shots from the Dal-TexBuilding, the court building. I've seen theories that there were shots from the other side, from the South Knoll car park, from the post office even. So we've got kind of this 30-minute period where we got kind of two scenes. We got what's happening to the president of the hospital, and then surely the police should be sealing off that area in Dealing Plaza, but there's no sealing off at all. I mean, people are walking around, and there could have been evidence there, and there could have been the murderers could have been there and just taken away all the evidence because the police didn't seal off the area.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next? So we've got that kind of phony post-murder 30 minutes. And at this stage, so we don't know anything about Oswald. Oswald is somebody we don't know anything about. We've no idea. We've no idea what's just happened.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to think it's come from the grassy knoll. Some people say it's come from the depository area.
Well, yeah, but both KenO'Donnell and Dave Powers were riding in the limo behind the presidential limo.
Yeah.
They're both World War II veterans that had been around gunshot fire but close
Yeah,
for a good number of years.
yeah,
And they both told Robert Kennedy
yeah,
in the aftermath, they both said to Robert Kennedy that the shots came from different directions.
yeah,
And they both gave statements to the Warren Commission to that effect, and those statements were disregarded.
yeah. The version I heard was that KenO'Donnell felt there'd been shots from the grassy knoll, but he'd been pressured by the FBI in saying that they'd come from the depository. And as I was saying to you in a mail before, if you look at I think it's the Phil Willis photo.
Yeah.
There's a famous Phil Willis photo with the black dog man in it.
Yeah.
But if you look in the Queen Mary, which I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Queen Mary was actually the follow-up security car, not the presidential limousine. So the Queen Mary was the Secret Service follow-up car. And if you look at that picture before the shooting, or before the fatal shooting anyway, KenO'Donnell sat behind the driver. And he's actually clutching. You can see him clutching the I don't know what you'd call the panel in front of him, and he's clutching it, and he's kind of sat forward on his seat, and he's kind of peering over towards the picket fence area. He kind of looks nervous. And right. But you look at the other guys, I mean, Clint Hill and all those guys, they look pretty relaxed. But you look at KenO'Donnell, he doesn't look relaxed at all. It's so I don't know whether he had an inkling. I read somewhere, I'm not saying it's true, but I read somewhere that actually KenO'Donnell was facing the sack because of something he'd done. I don't know what it was. So, but then apparently he didn't recover from what happened on that day, and I don't know why, but he drank very heavily after that, apparently.
But I mean, even Governor Connolly he swore under oath that the bullet that hit him wasn't the same bullet that hit JFK. He was convinced.
He said it was a different bullet, did he?
Yeah. He was under oath. He said, and he did it on a television interview as well. He said that he would never believe that there were only 3 shots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he also said that he knew what the truth was, but he would never divulge it because for the sake of the country, basically. Yeah. So
next.
Yeah, so that's that 30 minutes. So where do you want to go next? So we're going to go to Parkland Hospital, because at this point, I'm not sure at what point the phone call took place, but at some point around this time, an anonymous phone call was made to bring up the name of Lee Harvey Oswald. So,
do we know that though? Do we?
Yeah.
Do we know?
Well, we don't know there was a phone call, but the police said there was a phone call. But we know from other stuff that what the police have said, sometimes we have to take with a big pinch of salt. So, but officially, the police got a tip off that Oswald, for some reason, I don't know what kind of tip off it was, but that would implicate him in the police's eyes in what was going on. But It was an anonymous phone call. There is also a record of a call from George Bush, a phone call to say that some other guy might be implicated in it. You've got to remember that George Bush would become director of the CIA. At this time, apparently he wasn't in the CIA, although I think we got to say that's bullshit.
It is, because it's been proved that he was linked to the CIA at that point.
And he was also booked into the Sheraton Hotel, which is just a couple of blocks away, apparently. Although he's also on record as having been in somewhere else in Texas at that moment, although he flew back into Dallas later in the day, apparently. So, but there's a lot of shenanigans going on with anonymous phone calls. It's like, I could phone up and say after some shooting and say, John Doe, I just saw John Doe acting suspiciously. So I think that phone call was instrumental in shoehorning Oswald into this. So what do you reckon? They had one patsy lined up only, or do you think they had a lot of different options on their they were not lined up?
I think they would have had one scapegoat lined up, and I don't think they had more than one option. I think they had I think they just had the one scapegoat, the one fall guy. And my reason for thinking that is that if you've got more than one option, I think it leads to more opportunity to be able to pull apart what they were doing, what they were trying to do. I think it opens a lot of doors. I think when you've just got the one person to focus on, it's quite easy to set one person up. I think that I've said this before. I know at this point what we're talking about, we don't know anything about Lee Harvey Oswald, but I've also said before that whether it was him or somebody else, whoever they would get to be that patsy, they would just quite easily manipulate over a period of years to get to a point where they get them in the right place at the wrong time, if that makes sense. And I do believe that Jack Ruby was quite instrumental in all of that. I think he was the go-between, I believe. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that anonymous phone call came from him himself.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Somebody made it. Anyway, and I think that's shoehorning Oswald into what's going on. So,
excuse me, I'll eat my lunch.
It's all right. Yeah, so I think, I posted a photo, split screen photo, Photoshop of Oswald and Ruby, because there was a report, I think, was it Westmoreland or somebody, one of the Dallas policemen was quoted as saying that actually Lee Harvey Oswald was Jack Ruby's son.
Yeah.
When you look at their photos, there is a resemblance. I mean, they have like the same thin lips. There is a resemblance in my view, although I've got to say my facial recognition skills are pretty poor.
The thing that disproves that for me is that irrespective of the relationship between a father and son, I think when push comes to shove, it would be extremely difficult for a father to actually put a bullet through his own son.
Yeah, I mean, but it does happen. I mean,
yeah, it does. But you'd have to be pretty. Yeah, but
I don't think you should discount it just because of that emotional side of things. And especially, Ruby, if he worked for the mafia, I mean, he'd be under intense pressure, I mean, to do what he was told. that's assuming that they, if Oswald were his son, that they had a close relationship. I think, you know, also, I think there's a good case for believing that Oswald did have mafia connections. He'd lived in New Orleans.
We know he had mafia connections.
Yeah. And I think there's a good case for believing there's a strong mafia element in what went on.
100%.
So anyway, there's this anonymous phone call. Well, the police say there was an anonymous phone call. I think you also have to remember as well that this was the 1960s. In the 1950s, we'd had the McCarthy show trials. So it was an age of rabid anti-communism.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say there? So yeah, I can't remember. What was I going to say? Oh, so
you started saying that you got to remember in the 60s there was like rabid anti-communism.
Yeah, I can't remember what that point was I was going to make. So maybe it will come back to me at some point. So let's just move on anyway. So we've had the anonymous call, and I think maybe we need to shift to Parkland, what was going on at Parkland. So Jace, I know you have some views on what went on at Parkland, so you probably know more than I do about proceedings at Parkland. Can you talk us through that?
I'm not sure I do know more than you. I mean, I only know what I've seen, what I've read, what I've kind of put together myself, really. I'm very, very suspicious of the photographs that I've seen of the limo parked outside the hospital, for various reasons. I'm not even sure it's the same car. You know what I'm like for attention to detail on cars, right? And I know the number plate's the same. I've checked that out. I mean, number plate's easy to change, but for me, the interior looks different. I mean, I've seen shots. I've seen shots of the back of the car that were obviously taken by, you know, press or whatever that were there. But again, I mean, you talk about cordoning off crime scenes, right? The car, we've talked about this. The car was a crime scene.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's one of the most vital pieces of evidence. And really, if it were a normal crime scene investigation, that car would have been impounded. It should already, that car, upon arriving at Parkland Hospital, should already be impounded. That is evidence. That is evident. That is evidence in the murder investigation.
But I mean, I know 1963 was a different time. I know, I get all that. I totally get it, right? I get it. It was a little bit backward in terms of, you know, where we are now with what happens. But wouldn't you have thought? I mean, I don't know. I'm just surmising here that wouldn't you have thought that with all those police and Secret Service in attendance that day, that somebody would have got on a radio or some form of communication to the nearest hospital, and with it being, you know, I mean, it's not just a random bloke in the street that's been shot in a car. It's the President of the United States, for crying out loud, right? Yeah. Would you have not thought that rather than saying to the hospital, the president's been shot, we're bringing him in, would you have not thought that they would have said, we're coming to the hospital, get an ambulance to meet us on the way as soon as possible, because there would have been medical facilities in that ambulance, albeit a 1963, probably very primitive ambulance, I don't know. There would have been there would have been a way to get medical facilities to him quicker than waiting for him to arrive in a bloody limousine, right?
Yeah. Can I just interrupt you there? Sorry, just for a brief moment. So possibly as just as soon as just the day before. So usually the president's doctor, I don't know, he had an official name, surgeon or whatever, would have been in the same car or in the car behind. But for that motorcade, he was sat way, way, way back in the motorcade.
But even, again, another bloody whatever, but even just a doctor sat in the car behind wouldn't have been able to have assisted in the same way that an ambulance would, with possibly
but he might have been able to help in any little way. Might have helped, although to be honest, in this case, I don't think it would have helped, made any difference, to be honest.
No, I don't think so either. But what I'm trying to get across to you, mate, is that it just seems a little bit odd that the president's just had his face blown off.
Yeah.
And they just want to rock up in a limo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
Just a bit odd, really.
It is.
And an open top limo for that.
Yeah.
Right. And when they get there, they rock up, they park the limo right outside the front door of the hospital.
Yeah.
Which you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
Right outside the front door of the hospital. They're waiting, obviously they know he's coming. They wait in there, they get him out of the car straight away and rush him inside on a gurney, whatever.
Yeah.
Jackie's there. Jackie leaves her flowers in the back seat. So say, allegedly. Right. Governor Connolly is also injured. He's helped out of the car and taken in on a wheelchair or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then what? What happens to the car?
Yeah.
Right? It's left there.
Yeah.
For all and sundry to go and either touch, take photographs of. Well, it's not cordoned off.
No.
It's not that we know of. It's not moved. Right? It's just there. It becomes a removed crime scene that isn't secured in any way, shape or form, right? There are police there. There are police there.
It's evidence.
Yeah. But there are police there and there are Secret Service there, all crawling over the bloody thing, all crawling over the car, but also so are the public, so are the reporters.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to be there can go and have a gander what's going on in the car.
And witnesses say they saw like a hole in the windscreen.
Other witnesses say the windscreen was shattered.
Yeah. And
but in all of the pictures, you don't of the ones of where the pictures that I've seen of the car, where you see the interior, where you see Jackie's bouquet on the back seat, and blood and brain smatter on the back seat and whatever, you don't see the windscreen.
Yeah.
Right? The only time you see the windscreen is the photographs that are readily available. They're out there on the internet. The photographs that you see of the car, still so saying outside the hospital, with no blood smatter on the seat. Yeah. No brain fragment, but you can see the windscreen perfectly intact. Yeah. Right.
Thing about that is the Secret Serviceman then came out and sponged the seat. I mean, that's
exactly that.
And he's tampering with evidence.
And then the next photos you see is the limo has now got a removable hardtop put on it.
Oh, so the hardtop was put on it at Parkland.
Yeah. This is what I said to you before. Is that, I mean, I used to have a little, as you know, I used to have a little Triumph Spitfire that had a removable hardtop and a soft top, but it also had a removable hardtop. I myself, it's an epoxy little roof, used to struggle lifting that roof on and off, right? So I used to get help. I used to get at least one other person to help me lift it on and off. And that was just a little car. A Lincoln Continental is about 4 times the size of a Triumph Spitfire. So I know for a fact that hardtop roof would have weighed a bloody ton, right? And all of a sudden, it appears out of nowhere. Now, where was it? Who had it? How long did it take to get from wherever it was to the hospital?
Yeah.
Who ordered it?
Yeah.
Who handled it? You know, it's like,
Yeah,
what I'm saying is, it wasn't very long. It wasn't very long before that.
On that point, if you know, it's disputed who decided there wasn't going to be the hard top on it or the bubble on it or whatever you want to call it, but presumably that would have stayed at Love Field in the plane. And in the plane. I don't know. I guess in the plane, would it have stayed in the plane?
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is somebody would have given that order at some point to get that hard top from Love Field to the car and put on outside the hospital. Right.
Yeah. So that's bizarre. How did that get there?
Yeah, exactly. And I would have been asking the question, right? What was the timescale involved in all of that? What time did that hardtop arrive at the hospital? How long did it take to get from the hospital from Love Field? What was the mode of transport from Love Field to the hospital, right? So I'd be looking at the timeline. I'd be looking at how long did it take before somebody went, we need to put a roof on that car.
Yeah, the other question you could ask in relation to that is, did it arrive before the shooting?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. Was it round the back of the hospital, waiting for the car to arrive? And if so, what?
Was it like Blue Peter, here's when I prepared earlier kind of thing, you know?
Correctamundo, right? And for me, this is a real bloody murky cloud, right? That not once have I ever seen that questioned. Not once.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are so many things that have never been questioned. Not being. Let's say not being questioned by the mainstream media. I think we should say.
I've never seen this particular subject questioned by anyone, whether it was a member of the public, any mad conspiracy theorist. Yeah, I've never seen it questioned. Yeah. Nobody has ever asked that question. Where did that bloody roof come from?
Yeah.
Did it? You know, I mean, did somebody just up the road from the hospital have a random Lincoln Continental hardtop lying in their front yard? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like. Anyway, so this is my beef about the car. So the beef about the car is that in all the photographs I've seen of it, say outside the hospital. Now, obviously, you can only assume that it is outside the hospital because it's a photograph, and you don't know. And that photograph, I mean, it could be any Lincoln Continental. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the one that's outside the hospital, right? But for me, they all look. I can't put my finger on it, but they don't look like the same car. One of these days, I'm going to spot something and I'm going to go, yep, that's not the same car. And I'm going to be able to prove it. I pore over these photographs because there's just something that is leaping out at me that's telling me they're not the same vehicle, right? Don't know what that is, but one of these days, it's just going to hit me like a slap in the face.
Okay.
Anyway, that said, why, again, this is another question that's never been asked, why would you then leave, if you've already disregarded the car as a crime scene, which they had from the minute the bullet hit the president, right? If you've disregarded it, why would you then just leave that car parked outside the hospital? I mean, it's not like he's going to go home in it, is it? Yeah.
So presumably the follow-up car followed them to the hospital.
Yeah.
So were they all in the hospital? Nobody was looking after the car outside.
Secret Service were. But then look what else they were looking after. Oh, I don't know. So when they get in the hospital, protocol and procedure goes down the toilet.
Yeah.
I mean, there are rules, there are state laws.
Yeah.
Of what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
That basically the Secret Service totally overrode all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can come back to that because I want to keep to the timeline. So because I think that was probably how long were they must have been at the hospital, because I think the plane departed Love Field. They weren't that long at the hospital. It's when you think about it, they were in and out. I mean, the plane arrived at, I was saying to you earlier, I think it was 11:37. I might be a few minutes out there. 11:37 a.m. at Love Field.
Mm-hmm.
The shooting took place at 12:30. But then it was departing again, leaving Love Field at 2:43, 2:47, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
wasn't he officially declared dead around 1 o'clock, something like that?
Yeah. So he's declared dead at 1 o'clock, but that body was out of Dallas by 2:45 thereabouts.
Yeah, and they also had to the coffin that he left the hospital in, he was switched into a different coffin because they couldn't something to do, they couldn't get the coffin on the plane.
Yeah.
Because of the width of it or something.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
And even then, one of the Secret Service guys insisted that the coffin didn't go in the hold. It went on the plane.
Yeah, I think the captain apparently wanted that. I heard. So the captain of the plane.
I heard it wasn't the captain. I've heard it was Jackie that ordered it because she wanted Jack on the plane rather than luggage. I've also heard Johnson ordered it. I've also heard that one of the chiefs of Secret Service that was on board insisted on it, and in fact, Johnson was sworn in with the coffin bloody behind him on the plane.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's creepy, really, when you think about it. But, so much is going on at the same time. That's further down the timeline. So we can come back to that because, it wasn't just the Kennedy murder, because there is so much that goes on just in those few hours. You could make a movie about it. It's just, you could write you could write all the books that were going to be written about it. It's unbelievable. It wasn't just the shooting of the president, which is momentous enough. Within 40 minutes, we've got the guy who's being shoehorned in to have killed the president, shooting a policeman in the line of duty, apparently. So let's leave the body at the hospital for the moment, unless there was anything you wanted to add about what was going on around the 1 o'clock period.
What other than the half-assed autopsy?
Well, you mean the autopsy was later, wasn't it? Getting back to back to Washington. But if you want to talk about the autopsy, but the hospital at 1 o'clock, the doctor, and maybe it's worthwhile stating about what the medical staff saw at the hospital in Dallas and what they said they saw.
Well, apparently, so say he was still alive. He was still alive, right? When he got there. That's the official. He was still alive when he got there. Well, personally, I'm just saying. Well, I'm leading up to it. So what I'm saying is, I cannot believe, personally, having seen his head explode, that he would have been.
No, right? I don't.
Right. So whether they have to then formulate all this story about how they courageously battled to save his life, right, and all this kind of stuff. If they courageously battled to save his life, it didn't take them very long.
No.
Is that a courageous battle or is it just a decision? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I would have taken one look at him and I would have gone, no.
But that it just strikes me, if you think about that. Personally, I mean, it sounds very callous, but personally, I think he was gone back in Dealey Plaza myself.
Instantly.
And if you think about that, if you say he's gone in Dealey Plaza, then he's gone. That's where the car should stay.
100%. Don't move the body.
Yeah, he's gone. This is the murder scene. Let's secure the murder scene. But by then,
maybe they realised that. Maybe they realised that they'd done a wrong thing by doing that, and then put the official statement out that he was still alive when he got to the hospital.
Yeah,
because that then lets them off the hook about having to get him there quickly. And
that's right. But you know, if that's right, it's just occurred to me, you know, that by him officially still being alive, then that gives them excuse to take the crime, remove the crime scene.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
I think also that helps being in the car, the murder taking place in the car rather than, for example, at the Trade Mart or outside the car at Love Field. Being in the car, it facilitated
removal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think being in the car was a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as was removing the bubble.
Yeah. So as I said, there a lot happened within the, you know, it's unbelievable when you think about it. He was only in Dallas. He was in and out. He was in and out in 3 hours. I mean, but an awful lot happened in those 3 hours.
Yeah. So speed is something I want to touch on later, actually. And we probably ought to devote a whole episode to the speed of what took place and when it took place and all the rest of it, because I've got a lot of question marks about the speed and process, to be honest, which I'll go into later. But we already touched on about the whole swearing in thing. I mean, technically, the swearing in of a president on board Air Force One is not actually legal according to the Constitution, because you have to swear in a president in a particular state. So whatever state the president happens to be in at that particular time is meant to happen. But you also legally should have the state governor present at the swearing in, right? Now, when he was actually physically sworn in, the plane was airborne. So he wasn't technically in a state.
No, well, didn't I thought the swearing in took place while the plane was still on the ground?
Apparently not.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
So again, this is about timing and stuff, isn't it? It's about timing.
Yeah.
But either way, there was some doubt about whether the actual swearing in was constitutional, etc., etc.
Yeah,
that's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just before or after takeoff, so a lot more was going on before that. So can we just sort of dwell a little bit longer on what the medical staff say they saw? Because of course the doctors and nurses at Parkland treated Kennedy, so I think it's important to say what they say they saw. So and what they say they saw contradicts what the official autopsy says.
Yeah.
So Jace, I don't know what you know about what the doctors and the nurses say they saw at Parkland.
Well, what I do know is that the Parkland medical staff were kicked out. So how much did they see? That's the thing. They were kicked out by the civil service, Secret Service rather. They were actually they were said, right, no, you're not touching the president. You're not going anywhere near the president. Blah blah blah. And I think they had one doctor from the hospital. The rest were like brought in. So how many of the Parkland's actual staff did actually see what had happened to the president?
Well, yeah, I don't know about those numbers. I'm sure a few of them actually treated the president. I mean, and they say they saw the hole in the throat. So I think didn't the official autopsy try to say that that was a hole made by the medical staff and it wasn't a bullet hole and all that kind of stuff?
So it was, yeah. So that there was the hole in the throat. There's a lot of conflicting reports about the hole in the throat. So I do know that there were some accounts said that the hole in the throat was an entry wound. There were also accounts said the hole in the throat was the exit wound of the shot that ended up in Governor Connolly, right? And there were also reports that actually, because he was still alive when they got to the hospital, they performed an emergency tracheotomy on him to give him airway.
Yeah.
So there's three versions of that hole in the throat.
Yeah, I personally think if you look, even though we've doubted the Zapruder film, but there must be bits in the Zapruder film that are true, where you see the president holding his, what looks like he's holding his chest disease, not holding his throat.
Yes, but then the hole was there. It wasn't there. It was there. I mean, have you seen the autopsy photograph of the hole?
Well, I've seen so many photos. So
there is a photograph of his corpse.
Yeah, but I mean,
slab.
Yeah, personally, when I see him kind of holding wherever it is he holding here or holding here? I might be wrong, but I've always thought possibly a shot had gone through here.
Right. Well, Jackie stated that he clutched his chest because he'd been hit in the back and he couldn't breathe. His lungs were punctured. That's what she said.
Okay.
Yeah. It's what she said. It's not,
okay.
It's not what we know.
Yeah, I don't believe you, or I don't believe her, disbelieve her, So yeah, I'm just saying what it looked to me like. But if you say that, then I'm not gonna doubt it. So
well, I mean, I'm just thinking of when you get, have you ever been punched in the back or hit in the back?
Thankfully, not very often. I don't recall having been done, although it must have been, I'm sure.
I have, when I've been doing door work and stuff, and you get idiots that just go out and they hit you from behind and stuff, and instantly when you get hit in the back, you feel it in the front. I don't know why that is, you just do. So it's almost like you get hit like that and you cough at the front. It's a weird sensation. So I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that if you've been hit at a high velocity, with something like that, maybe your instinct would be to go like that. I don't know, but I mean, yes, absolutely. It does look as though he's gone to hold his throat, but I think if you slow it right down, it looks like he's gone to his chest.
Okay.
His arms are sort of like that rather than like that.
Yeah, so Jason, you were talking about those shots. So I think also we'd better mention the head wound. So what do you reckon, the splatter that we saw on the Zapruder film, is that authentic or not?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose there was excuse me, there was, what was it, 12 years before anyone saw it? 12 years is an awful long time you can doctor a piece of film, right?
Because
again,
Doug Horn from the review board in the 90s, he claims that actually that splatter on Zapruder film has been doctored, and actually it's hiding where the actual real head wound was. So maybe rather than here, it was maybe a bit lower, I think, or behind the ear.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say. So, if we go down that road of that bit of footage that we eventually saw, or the public eventually saw, was doctored, you then have to ask the question as to why it was doctored, and then if it was then doctored, why did it then take 12 years to show it? Because obviously, if the motive for doctoring it was to, shock and awe the public, then why would that take 12 years? I don't know. It poses more questions than it answers if you say, yeah, I think it was doctored, because I don't know. I mean, the whole quality of the film is piss poor because it's 1963, right? All the pinks look ultra pink, and all the reds look really red, and blah 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 blah, and that's just on the people's clothing. So I'm not so sure that it is doctored, to be honest. I think the actual headshot, the head explosion, I think is pretty genuine. I would say. And in many ways, if you look at some of, say, like the early 1960s movies that have got special effects, where there are special effects because they are so naff, right? They are so naff. That's what I'm saying. So, sort of in that sort of time scale around between the 60s and whenever 1975 or whatever it was, right? The actual special effects that were available weren't that special. So I would have thought that if it had been doctored, it would have been obviously doctored. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas it isn't. It's doctored.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in two minds. I can't make my mind up. That's the thing with all the imagery. You just don't. You can't be sure about it.
Well, it's because there is so much smoke and mirrors that you actually you cannot take anything at face value. You just can't look at it and say, right, well, yeah, that's how it was,
Yeah.
But applying a bit of logic to things, you can sometimes maybe get to an opinion, a decision as to whether something is genuine or not.
Yeah.
That's the bit of logic that I'm applying to that, is that if it had a special effect on it, then it wouldn't be that special.
Okay. Yeah, let's leave it there, Jay. So let's just say we've arrived at 1 o'clock-ish. Kennedy's been officially declared dead. There's been an anonymous phone call. I think it was before 1 o'clock. I think there was an anonymous phone call to implicate Lee Harvey Oswald. And then maybe from next time, we can pick up from the Tippit murder. So unless there was anything else you wanted to add, we call it a day there. Okay, cheers, Jace.
See you next time.